Hey, what's happening? It's Leroy Downs. Welcome to another version of the Just Jazz Cafe. It's so wonderful to be able to talk to all these musicians and, really speak, man. A lot of these folks have been beautiful friends of mine for a long time. So we get a chance to talk about the music, talk about what's going on in life, just like we're going to do today. Man, you want to talk about a multi-Grammy winning artist, just somebody who writes, who plays, and really get us the chance to be with all of the people in the business on the highest level that there is. Somebody that I've always admired. Take a look. There she is, Miss Terri Lynn Carrington. What's going on, girl?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
Man, I'm come having you. Thank you for being here. You've been really one of my heroes in the music for quite a long time, and we talk about all of these great things. We've seen you play here and all over the world. Coming up very shortly, as a matter of fact, in just a couple of days, the 2020 NEA Jazz Festival Awards, and you're the music director of that. Let's talk about that right off, because we got some big heavyweights that are winning the award this year. So talk about how under a pandemic you worked that out.
Yeah, it was quite challenging, but really rewarding and fulfilling. It took a lot more time than if I were to just go to an event a couple of days before, rehearse some, and do a show.
Yeah.
This involved really preparing an arrangement ahead of time in a way that musicians could stack themselves on these performances, and it sounds a bit like they were all in the same room. And
Wow.
because we see those performances on on YouTube or wherever quite a lot these days, but I think it's a little easier with music that's not improvised as heavily. With pop, R&B, any of those forms. I think it's a little bit easier with jazz since there's so much relying on responding to someone. It was challenging, but somehow we pulled it off. It came off very well, and
Well,
really,
that's something I knew you would, but in person, when you're playing with all these wonderful musicians that you do, and we could spend like a couple hours running it down. I mean, that vibration of being on stage with the musicians next to you, there's nothing like that.
right.
And in this day and age, right now in 2020, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, and everybody's doing it a little bit differently. Who have you been reaching out to and talking to, and have you been able to get together with some people and just feel that energy off of each other?
Sure. Well, I've done a few shows, socially distance shows.
Right.
One was a duet with Danilo Perez and
Mm.
myself, and that was for the Carr Center in Detroit, and I'm artistic director for the Carr Center. So we have a few more really interesting duets coming out this year, and for this whole season, which is October to April or so. And then I did a live from our living rooms show, uh, which is a cool format that raised about $140,000 over three festivals that they did, and gave that money to musicians that needed it. So it was great to participate in that. And that was with Chris Davis on piano, the amazing pianist Chris
Yeah.
Davis, and Val Genty as a turntablist.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, you guys had a really dope. I mean, the album is dope. It's Chris's album. But to see you guys perform live, we got a chance to see it at the Red Cat, back when we could see each other and hug each other and be in each other's presence. And really, really incredible show.
oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, and then just reaching out to my friends and trying to find other ways to be creative. That's like the main thing, and that's what I try to really instill in our students. The way I see it is you were creative before the pandemic, and
Right,
you're
right.
going to stay, and have to remain creative in the pandemic, especially now. That's what you have uh, to really work through this time period. It's like therapy and it's documenting this
Mm.
time period. And with the things that we learn and things that are revealed, I think it teaches us or will show us a new model of how to be creative after the pandemic. So I think it's really important, to embrace as best we can the moment. And there's always something, that we're going to pull from it. And there's hopefully some things we leave behind as well.
Well, true that. We're talking about a pandemic, and there's so much I want to talk to you about. But since we're talking about some other things too, I think I mentioned to you that we're doing a series of concerts called Jazz Musicians Unite Against Racism,
Mm-hmm.
and it's basically a race to November 3rd, voting day. We've done two so far. We've got another one coming our way here in October, and then hopefully we can do a victory one in November. But I wanted to talk to you about that, as I've been talking to a lot of musicians about just our lives. I mean, ever since we were born and been on this planet, there's been some direct and a lot of indirect and a lot of microaggressions and a lot of subliminal things that people may say and don't mean, and
Mm-hmm.
twisting it all around. And I just want to know how in the world of jazz, and especially being a beautiful woman jazz professional, how all of this has affected you, your life, your playing, and and what are we doing about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a loaded
It's
question.
super loaded.
I mean, I think, one thing, I mean, I think it's exciting, to see us come together more as a collective community, just people from all over the world, from different walks of life, different races, coming together to recognize and acknowledge that systemic racism exists, even though there's, some people in Washington that think it doesn't. Um, but that it exists, and these oppressive systems, have really affected um, groups of people, especially Black and Brown people. And I think there's this kind of global awakening that is just really beautiful to see finally, because so many of the people that fought for these rights, so many have passed, and didn't see a lot of movement at all, a lot of movement on the needle at all.
Mm,
And I, was talking about this with Angela Davis, who's somebody that is also acknowledging this moment, but somebody that's really fought for it, and is, she has said outright that she's happy, to be alive to see something that looks like change. And this change that's happening is not just a new thing. And I don't think even the people that fought for it are surprised so much, because like when you're fighting these justice struggles, it's always with the thought that it's going to change.
mm,
You know what
mhm.
I mean?
Yeah,
So she was also mentioning she was happy that John Lewis lived long enough to see some
yeah,
of this what's happening today. Because then even at the end of his life, it's a cap on it saying, yeah, all that I did was not necessarily in vain. Not that we can say everything has changed and everything is groovy now. It's
right.
it's more about now we see maybe a very distant, very small pinhole light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah,
And then that's gonna give us the energy, to keep marching, energy to keep moving, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I'm totally excited about that, honestly. Just like I was thinking earlier today, because I'm involved with a group of amazing women that are everybody that you would know, but I don't know if this is really public yet, so I don't think I'll mention all the names.
Come
But
on.
we're doing. I'll text somebody to say, "Is it okay to mention this?" I'll text them while we're talking. Then I maybe so I'll tell you by the end of our conversation.
All
But
good.
I was thinking about just because it's a kind of a get out and vote initiative.
Mm,
And I was thinking about how um, my grandmother was born in 1911 on
mm,
August 4th. Then I was born in 1965 on August 4th.
mm.
And that was 2 days before the uh, act Voting Rights Act was signed. So for the first 2 days of my life, you know, that right was not legible to a lot of African Americans.
Yeah.
Um, and then 4 years before that, Barack Obama was born on August 4th, the same
Mm.
day
Oh,
as me and my grandmother. So when when he first ran for president and was elected, the election was in 2008, and he went into office 2009. And my grandmother was still alive. Now she was
oh,
born
she
in
saw it.
1911, and she died in 2011.
Mm.
And for her to have been born before the Suffrage Act was even though that didn't affect all black women. Black women, I think, black people had the right to vote in some states and not in others, but finally there was, Voting Rights Act. But for her to have seen, the Suffrage Act, the Voting Act, and then see Barack Obama um, become president was really major. And I just thought, made me think about how much has happened in, 1 century,
Mm.
and how how much can change quickly. Because when I by the time I was able to vote at 18, it was only 18 years before that, that every black person couldn't vote.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's amazing how things change because I'm just used to it, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, I always try to stay inspired. Of course, I get angry, and we can always go down those dark roads,
Sure.
but I feel, like we've all benefited. We have to look at ourselves because we've all benefited somehow from systemic oppression, or other forms of, it could be racism, it could be sexism. We've, could be various things that, without really knowing, like implicitly, or not implicitly, what's the other word I'm looking for? Inconspicuously, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Inconspicuously, we've benefited sometimes, and I think it was Ella Baker that, was that I was listening to, was talking about that. So I think I came to a point where had to really check myself.
Mm.
I think that's what everybody has to do there, because as we ask in this particular racial climate, as we ask white people to check themselves, because there's, obviously very many liberal white people that feel like they're on the right side of things, and that can be dangerous.
Mm. Mm.
um, you have to constantly ask yourself um, how you not just benefit, but uh, how you're involved with systemic forms of oppression.
Yeah.
Participate. That's the word. I
Well,
had that.
some are honest, and sometimes, actually they really don't know that what they just said wasn't cool. So
Right.
it's cool to check them nicely. I mean, you don't need a hard check unless you need a hard check. But most of the time, I mean, I look at it like this: some regular human being, especially when we're around so much jazz. I see a lot of love. I see a lot of happiness, and I know that emanates from each one of the musicians and each one of the creative people as they come together to put their art on display for everybody. It's happy. It's at least I think it is. Even when we have different messages that are in the music that need to be said, and whether that's lyrics or whether it's just the music, we get a chance to express all of the ways that we feel through the music. I think people
Mm-hmm.
see it. I think people get it. Um, I don't, yeah, I'm black, but I don't really notice that until I see, until something else out in the environment happens, and I'm like, oh, then I know that immediately affects me. I mean, we're all human beings, and I think we all look at each other with love, especially in this business, which is one of the reasons I love jazz so much. You know, um, I have no idea why the whole world doesn't embrace this music and understand all the jewels that they can get from it. But those who do come around and those who are, are artistic understand that. And it's like our little flower of power that we get a
Mm.
chance to put out. What are some of the messages that you like to convey when you're curating music? I know you curate a lot of programs. I saw a Billy and Me that you did with Diane and Nikki Harris and Joan Osborne. Look, I've seen a whole bunch of stuff that you've
Mhm.
done. So I'm always thinking, what are your thoughts are when you curate something that is going to be powerful creatively, but you also want folks to kind of walk away with some sort of message that maybe they didn't know before.
Yeah, well, I think the best way to even think about that question is my last project, my last album that's out is called Waiting Game with Terry, Lynn Carrington, and Social Science is the band. But we kind of addressed um, many different social issues. It's a double album, so on the first half, the first album, it's a produced uh, the produced album because the other side is produced but differently.
Mm,
But the one that's like took several years really to make, all addresses themes, social justice themes. The bands with Matthew Stevens and Aaron Parks and myself, we formed the band. So it was interesting, to me and to others, I guess, we kind of, I think we're foreshadowing this moment that we're in because I formed a band with two white guys, but they're like brothers to me.
they are brothers. I mean, I wouldn't even think of them as white guys until you say something like that. I mean, I think it's just amazing how creative we can be and what we really concentrate is on that sound. That's why that concert is called Jazz Musicians Unite Against Racism. We come together no matter what
right,
the colors are, no
right,
matter what the cultures are, all to put out that message
right.
through music.
Yeah, and everybody contributed music, and our message and our themes are about police brutality against Black people, uh, mass incarceration or for-profit prison systems, homophobia, Native American genocide, um, political prisoners, and of course, gender justice is in there
Mm,
too.
yeah.
And I started an institute at Berklee College of Music addressing that. But what I've come to see right now in this moment is that, like, even in our mission statement, we changed it to reflect gender justice and racial justice
Mm,
because they're inextricable to me. They're from the same source, and that source is white male hetero patriarchy, and it's the same. You can go back to colonization, and I'm sure you can go further back, but uh, we, I think, have to, as a group of people, have to continually look at all of the social justice issues and look at them from an intersectional lens. And I
mm,
can't stress that enough because no one's free until we all are free. And
yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
everybody says that, right?
Yeah.
And it's real. And as a Black woman, I can't separate those two things, And when you look through the lens, even of the most marginalized groups, you start to see, really what needs to be changed, And I have to say, the thing I can't be afraid to criticize, the thing that I love the most, which is the music. And,
Mm.
I feel like jazz has dropped the ball, including myself. I was one of the people that dropped the ball,
In
when
terms of,
in terms of gender equity.
mm,
Absolutely, because there's, roughly about, when it comes to instrumental music, there's roughly about 5% women that are successful at playing instruments in jazz. That is way too low when there's 50% of the population. So my question is, what are we going to do about it? Yeah, we dropped the ball, but what are we going to do about it? And so I have these types of conversations with musicians all the time, and musicians that understand it and say, yeah, yes, it should be different. And then the question is, but what do we do? So I always suggest, mentoring somebody and looking at potential
mm,
versus merit sometimes. That's really important because anytime you want something to change, um, you have to think differently, open different doors, and really help people develop and grow. Same with leadership roles. You can't expect the leadership of somebody that's you're hiring, that maybe hasn't had that experience to come through the door just ready to go.
Right,
There's
right.
training. It
School
has to
doesn't
have.
always prepare you for that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about even this, moment with race. People want to see equity, but sometimes they're looking at numbers and statistics, and that doesn't
Hmm.
always do it.
Yeah.
It's about leadership roles as well. And in jazz, it's not just leadership roles. It's more about mentoring and apprenticeships because that's how the music has been and has developed.
It's
And also on the
always,
business side.
yeah, well, on the music side, it's really always been like that, man. In terms of getting your education, you got it on the stage. And a lot of the older musicians always looked at the younger musicians, pulled them on, gave them an opportunity. And then when the younger musician becomes the elder, the same thing. It kind of is like a very
Right.
spherical, cyclical thing when it happens. I mean, and talk about mentorship. You as a child were just mentored by some of the best, and
Mm.
they recognized that, and it wasn't like, oh, it's a woman or it's a male. They just recognized talent. It's like, you know what,
Right.
it's
But
my responsibility.
right. But the problem with that, I'm gonna tell you right now, the problem with that is I had a father and a grandfather that played music. So I was a third generation musician. I
Hmm.
had a father that knew everybody. So he took me from a very young age, to all the clubs, to all the concerts, and said, "This is my daughter, give her a shot. She can play." And they're looking at him like, "Well, we've known you for years." Well, okay, you say that. And then I had to have the goods. But the
Right,
point is, there's a lot of young women that don't have that
right.
opportunity. They don't have anybody ushering them in.
Hmm.
And, whether people want to admit it or not, if you look at the numbers, that apprenticeship that we're talking about has mostly been patriarchal. It's
Hmm.
been mostly male to male. And even women are part of, this problem, like myself. Like, I didn't recognize that I was part of the problem until a few years ago. That's
Oh,
very late.
wow. Well, I mean, I've heard about, and you probably can attest to this too, but I've heard about in some of these musical institutes of higher learning. Yeah, there's a ton of guys, and then there's your talented women that are in these sets, and they're trying to become musicians too. And it seems like they have to go through a ton more and really kind of fight off all this other extra energy just to be at the same place
Right.
at someone else's. And I mean, I
Yeah.
personally know somebody who's experienced that at one of our higher institutions of learning. I hope that doesn't happen all over the place. And then, of course, there's regular life with, people coming at you as a woman. It's like there's got to be this mutual respect. Um,
Right.
but yeah, talk about it.
I've talked about that, yeah, with Esperanza. We had a trio with Jerry Allen and Esperanza and myself, and we all realized that was like a turning point for me. Even though I had already done the Mosaic Project album, it was
Right.
shortly after that we had this trio, and it was a turning point because we all felt something different and that we couldn't really identify.
Hmm.
And it was like I think Esperanza finally put it into words, which was that we didn't feel like we had to have a guard up
Hmm.
at
When
all.
when you formed that trio, you felt like you didn't have to have the guard up.
Yeah, there was a guard down on the stage where we weren't thinking about, was this person looking at me? Oh, they didn't like the way I played. Am I being accepted? Oh, I didn't get a solo as long. Oh, it wasn't all this extra chatter because our guard was down. And those things are there because they're real. They're not
Mm.
there because we're making them up.
Right,
You know
right,
what I
right.
mean? Do they think I'm playing? Oh, am I hitting as hard as, the next guy? And our sound even is always being compared to the next guy. And there's a beautiful feminine aesthetic that I've learned to accept and bring into the music. And I don't feel like I have to even, perform masculinity
Mm-hmm.
to be good anymore. Whereas before, I felt that pressure, so to say. You know,
Sure.
and I'm
Right.
confident that I can hit the drums as hard as most guys. You know, it's
Right.
not
Right.
even about that for me.
Sure. Sure.
It's about choices and the aesthetic that I want to bring, and you know, finding my authenticity. And I think that's the thing that pisses me off the most
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
men are able to bring their authenticity to the music without it being questioned,
Right.
right? And women are not quite able to do that. So most women feel, and I've talked to many, many women musicians about it, the successful ones that work all the time and the ones that aren't so successful. And there seems to be a very, very strong common thread with feeling that there's this sense of masculinity being performed that you have to participate in, not just on the bandstand, but sometimes off the bandstand too. So that
Mm.
means even off the bandstand would mean, you know, all the hanging, you obviously hang if you're on tour more than you even play, right?
Sure. Sure.
But you have to be the kind of woman that is okay with them. So that could be, a lot of people would describe that as, you know, not too masculine, not too feminine, kind of just right, you know, to fit in to this, you know, because some guys, they don't want to hang out with women that are too stereotypically feminine, or they feel like they can't be themselves. They can't curse, or they can't, you know, be
Yeah.
raw, right? And
Yeah.
then you can't be like too much one of the guys. You have to be a little bit one of the guys, but you can't be too much one of the guys because then that might be offensive. So I know young students of mine that graduated and went into the workforce and realized to even just fight off sometimes people hitting on them, they became a little more masculine, and that wasn't even who they were.
Mm.
I was like,
Mm.
that was fascinating to me, you know, because you guys don't have to think about any of that.
Well, and I get that. And I've been, I love to hang. I love to get backstage and hang. And so I've been there. I know the energy. Uh, but yet, you're right. I never got into the head of one of the women and see how they're dealing with it. I have got into their head when I've seen some uncomfortableness coming from them or someone talking to them. Or so when I see the uncomfortableness, then I can kind of think about it. But other than that, I'm just thinking like everybody's backstage and equal. But to have like 20 extra things that you have to work out and really nobody to talk to about it if it's predominantly males around is rough. It's like lonely and all of these people, and then you got to do this thing. So that makes me think about like your concert with Billy and me, or when you're respecting all these great women and Sarah Vaughan and all that, and Ella. Like, what the hell did they have to go through after their performance? Here they are, the star. Everybody's approaching them all of these different ways. And then when you're by yourself, you have to kind of think about all those different elements. And it's like, man, I just kind of want to be treated like Ella. Somebody come straight at me and deal with me as Ella so we could be friends and do what we got to do. Not, the cats bringing the roses and the candy. Okay, that's nice, but you can bounce, and the cats in the band, they're all respectful. So that's cool. But then like, yeah, what about me? Who's just going
Right.
to come directly at me and deal with me? I've seen that with a number of high profile singers and women who are leaving the band, and I always think about afterwards, like, damn, like what about what's up with that?
Yeah, I think that's one reason why a lot of them ended up alone, you know, because
Right.
you fall in love with the music and that doesn't even work often with your relationships, you know, marriages and all of that, because again, it's kind of coming from a place of the typical roles that have been played. And it's always been like the men are the hunters and the gatherers, and they go out and work and bring, you know, what's needed home, right? And it's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when women are the ones doing that, unless you have, you know, a guy that's a manager or a hanger on or yeah,
On the equal status, yeah.
or equal, yeah. But even that sometimes I think it can be difficult because there's this pride or something that jumps in that you know tends to screw things up, I think. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just I don't know the answers to that other than I do see a lot of women that are in this industry, especially in the jazz realm, and that are leaders. I see a lot of broken relationships at home,
Mm,
and
mm.
I think we choose the music. I think that's the first thing we choose.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like just like all the dudes have, because see, it's all okay for them to leave. They didn't miss their children's birthdays, miss their holidays,
Woo.
missed everything, and that was kind of accepted, because they're out working.
Yeah,
And so with women that choose to do that, then they're looked at as bad moms, or and it's we've been chosen too, the ones that make it.
right, of
And
course.
yeah, and think about the people that we just mentioned, Sarah, well, maybe not Ella so much, but Sarah, Carmen McRae,
Hmm.
um, different ones that
Betty.
Shirley Horn, but I'm thinking about the ones that also played piano,
Mm,
right? And the choice to sing, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they had been more encouraged to play. Because
hmm.
the way Ella Fitzgerald improvises, you can't tell me if she had put a horn in her mouth if she would have been
Right.
a bad player.
Yeah.
So those are really interesting things to ponder and to imagine what would have been different, if
Hmm.
society had been different and if we weren't dealing with these gender constructs as much as we are.
Well, we had been dealing with the gender constructs for a long time, but just like throughout history, those who have been oppressed have been silent. It's a different time now. Everybody's standing up and speaking up. So, as opposed to getting in a conversation where we had to figure it out on the spot, how can we, as humans, as men, as women, how can we, in this day and age, get together, understand those things about each other, and just make everybody comfortable in the situation? I hate for anybody to be uncomfortable, but what are some of the things that are done wrong by men backstage or on the stage that need to change?
Wow, that's a great question. Nobody asked that. That's good. I do a lot of talking about this issue, but nobody really comes straight out and says, well, I got to now make a list. So whenever I have that question, I have some
Hold up.
answers. See, now I'll forever remember you for asking that. Um, I think it's a lot of different things. There's no, real like one thing. I mean, I think on a basic level, we start with language
Hmm.
and looking at language as something that would just not something that we're just used to, and we say what we say when we say it because that's what we're used to saying. You know what I mean? We have to stop and pause. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it
Look
can't
at
be any canned phrases. It's got to be an individual thing.
Yeah, but I mean, like certain things that's been like, for instance, chicks. Nobody wants to hear that. Women do not want to hear chicks.
No,
I
no, no,
still
no, no, no.
hear it. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, did they
that that
really say
that
that?
that says more about the person saying chicks than actually what it is. And if you do hear it, you call them on it.
Oh, I
I'm
do.
like,
You
oh,
too. You gotta call them on it.
I'll call them on it. I'll call them on it.
That's what we need, right? For
But I do
every
say a few things. I say a few things like, but I think I'm saying it with love. I hope I'm not being, disrespectful. I mean, even when we started this conversation off, I think I said, "Hey, dog, what's happening?" Like, but
Yeah.
that means like
No,
my
but that
friend,
yeah,
not
yeah.
like,
I think yeah,
not
I think
like,
we know the difference. It's like it's interesting, like there's sometimes there's a, a, phrases of affection, especially between people that know each other. Like I've
mm,
known you for years, so I'm not going to take offense to that. Now, if you were
right.
somebody I just met this moment
Yeah,
and
yeah,
said
no.
that,
Well, they
I
got no
might have,
right to be saying that. I feel like yeah, I could probably,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You see what I mean? There's levels of knowing people and getting to know people and comfort zones, and there's color in our language.
yeah. There is.
Like some people you can say baby and it's totally cool, but then other people can't. And
Yeah.
it's a relationship. I always talk about when I first met Amy Winehouse on the first Billy and Me show was done for the BBC in
Mm,
London, and she was on it, and it was right before her first record came to the United States, so I had never heard of her.
mm,
And all these people like groupies at the hotel, and I was like, who the hell is this?
right.
And she didn't really learn the tune, so I was a little frustrated with her. but she kept calling me baby, and I swear I wanted to just slap her. You
And
know,
what is she? Is that's her lingo? That's probably just her lingo. And what does she mean by that? Did
I don't know, but she didn't know me,
right?
and so it bothered me that she felt that comfortable. Hey, baby, so and so. Oh, okay, baby, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, but I'm like, what? Like I'm older than her. All of these things. That you want to demand respect. I grew to love and appreciate her artistry, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not disrespecting that on any level. But I do think that because I didn't correct her because I was MDing a big show, a huge show. It was much bigger than one you saw because it had about 20 artists.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was crazy. And it was my first show ever MDing like something like that. So it
Oh.
was, yeah, so I wasn't gonna trip on her, but I just like in my brain, I was like, wow. But we do, because I was with Dizzy Gillespie once, and some young people, young white kids. Hey, Dizzy, so and so, can I get an autograph, Dizzy? And he went off. He says, Mr. Gillespie, you don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm old enough to be your grandfather.
Right, right, right.
you know.
Well, and I understand. Okay, I'm gonna give a little something up here. Back when I used to work at the grocery store a million years ago, which is where I met George Duke and all these folks. But I was going to college at the time, and on my days off, when I needed a break from studying, I shouldn't even say this. I was watching All My Children. So don't. We're not gonna tell nobody.
Oh,
But I was
oh,
watching this show called
oh.
All My Children, right? And there was this character on there named Jesse. And
Yes, I
so,
remember. I know
yeah. So
Jesse.
one time, this Jesse came into the store. And I was like, "Yo, what's up, Jesse, man? Oh, da 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 da." Right? I was just so happy to see him. He's like, "Hey, what's up, man? My name is Dwayne, whatever his name was." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I mean, I didn't tell him thank you, but you just taught me a big lesson there. But before that, I didn't know. So I think with a lot of people, especially as we get older, I mean, look, I'm 5'7". I don't remember the 30-year-old me or the 21-year-old me or the 15-year-old me. I don't know how I act or what I said or what I did. That was that
Right,
dude. I'm not
right,
that
right,
dude.
right, right. Exactly.
So we're catching
Yeah.
people at these different times in their life, and maybe nobody stepped to this person yet, pulled them. Now, there are some people who know better. We know that. But no one's really stepped to this person and said, hey, man, when you address women, man, you really should think about, oh, maybe they need that first lesson to like kick them in gear.
Sure. No, you're right. It's some of it is home training, but some of it is privilege.
Yeah.
So I think that that's always rolling around in the back of our heads. And you mentioned microaggressions and things like that, and that's an important issue because sometimes we don't know where it's coming from,
Mm,
and we have you know I don't say we're scarred, but we have a history of certain things. So somebody could be coming at you quite innocently, but because of your experience, you uh, interpret it or you view it or it affects you differently.
yeah.
So I think all those things. But back to what you asked about what can be done, and I said let's start with language. I mean, also in the jazz world, well, we don't have like HR, for instance, or I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there's no checks and balances really.
Right.
And
Right.
so when you go to a college, liberal arts school, one of the first things they introduce themselves and they say my preferred pronoun is she,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's doing stuff like that in jazz. And I think that we have to be conscious of what's happening, how society is changing
Mm,
and moving, and 20% of all millennials, as far as 2017, that's so it's probably even a little more now, but 20% of all millennials didn't consider themselves cisgendered or straight. And me working at a university, I see that. I have those students, probably 20%,
mm,
in my classes.
yeah.
So as society and the world changes and language changes, if you know, we have to when we go to our friend's wedding, it doesn't take us that long to call this friend by the new last name if they in fact even change their name, right? We
Mm.
get used to that pretty quickly. So
Hmm.
if somebody changes their pronoun and looks at, you know, that as a choice, you know, as a social construct, and you know, we have to respect these things. And I think just to keep ourselves in a space of being open and learning and respecting humanity, and not, because otherwise we're just as bad as the oppressor that has oppressed us, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's all kind of throughout all of the years, it's gotten to this peak now. So at this peak now, everybody is speaking, everybody is saying, hey, I'm this person, I'm this person, I'm this person. And there's no more closets, man. All the doors are open and everybody's saying their thing. So at this point, whether you were to like it or not like it, whatever, at least you got to say, okay, my man's being addressed like that now. Okay, that's how he's being addressed, or that's how she's being addressed. So it's got to get into your brain that whether you want to use it or whether you don't want to use it, if you're going to be in conversation or talk about this, you know, you got to do it.
Yeah, that's at the very least.
Sure.
At the most, I encourage people to embrace those things, because I think if you're somebody that feels like I don't want to do that or that's a drag for me, I think that's more important to look at. You know, the reason why you think that. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
actually the more important thing, because that tends to be based in um, you know, certain kinds of phobias, or certain kinds of supremacy or hierarchy, you
Right,
know,
right,
all
right.
the things that we were talking about that you know, white male patriarchy brought us,
Mm,
and we start to repeat these things, you know, too.
mm.
So
That's been a problem with our society for the longest time. And that's what has divided us individually is what, you know, we all worried about what they say, and when they're talking about us, they may be talking with that person or that person, but we're all in it, and then we might look at that person based on what they said, and we can't do that.
right.
So, you know, we all have a lot to learn about that, and you know, I think it's just going to take some regular conversations, and then people go, oh, all right, well, that's cool, you know.
Right. You're right. Conversation is key. You know, that's the first step in trying to understand somebody. But I think we also have to look at being all connected, humanity being like one thing, and we're all connected, and not, you know, looking at it from any kind of hierarchy. And that's the problem that I have with the words ally, and because and even privilege, because they they imply hierarchy,
Mm,
you
mm,
know. So like, even I was talking to Sean Jones about this recently, and he said that he doesn't like ally either, and he looks at it like partners, because he was talking specifically, and it was a public, you know, discussion. That's why I said, but he was talking about his sister, and
yeah.
his sister was like, "I don't need an ally. I need a partner in this."
Well,
And
I looked at ally as a friend, as being a partner, but it's different.
well, I can say that as a person, that some people might say I'm your ally.
Mm.
Yeah, that
Like
feels
I can
weird.
do something for you, kind of a
Yeah,
thing. Gotcha.
exactly. It's like it's slightly related to like a missionary kind of thing. Like, whereas, you know, the person, her name is Asia Burrell Wood, who's the managing director of our institute, and she had me laughing. I think it was just yesterday, saying that, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, when the mission people went to Africa with uh, a Bible and a sandwich, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and said, "We're offering you a Bible and a sandwich," and they said, "Well, no, thank you very much. We have our own religion, and we like our own food.
Right,
So
right.
what we need is an irrigation system."
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. Got it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like making sure you meet people at where they are, and it's not, there's no set rules. Everybody doesn't need the same thing. Everybody doesn't feel like they're marginalized. Everybody doesn't feel like they're
Mm.
not privileged. Everybody doesn't even feel like they need an ally. But a partner is really saying that we are all in this together, all fighting
And for the same
the
thing.
same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know. I dig that. I dig that. Just like you guys have partnered up to celebrate a beautiful brother, Mr. Wayne Shorter. You guys, something coming out this Friday. It's the 5th part of the SF Jazz performances honoring Wayne.
Hmm.
And just tell me how special Wayne is and how that performance went.
Yeah, well, Wayne's like my musical mentor, my spiritual guru.
Yeah.
Um, he's like the person that I quote the most.
Oh,
Um, and yeah, he's just always dropping those, dropping some bombs. But even just, since I started playing with him when I was 21. So he's just so special, to me and to so many people. And even speaking about, he's one of the first people that I worked with that was consciously trying to hire women. Like he was very conscious
mm,
with, he has hired a lot of women over the years. And I remember once sitting in an interview with him in Europe somewhere, and they asked him about that. And he said, well, I read a lot of science fiction books.
right.
And in the science fiction books, women and children are the ones that are in the forefront, making change, making things happen. And I thought about that, and I was like, wow, that is like it's about projecting the future and imagining a different future, and that's what
Mm,
transformation is. And so often we as musicians are either reporting what's happening at present, and that's valid, or we're looking sometimes back and bringing something back from our culture or whatever, bringing it, to make sure people don't forget something.
right.
But not often enough, if I may say so,
Yeah.
do we point to possibilities for the future. Do we outline a different future? And so that's one of the greatest things I think I've seen with Wayne, because that's how he thinks.
I think
And
that's where he lives, man. He does not live, he's physically on this planet with us, but he really lives, you know, 10 miles ahead. Like you guys are just getting here. I thought about that, 10 miles ago, but now I'm here and I'm seeing this. And that's what he's always going for, that jewel that's out on the road that we're not even having thoughts about yet, you know?
yeah, well, that's a visionary, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, he's, excuse me, he's a visionary, and that's why we love him so much, and that's why he can play one note and
And he does. Right.
connect everybody's humanity.
It's interesting when Wayne, you say Wayne in one note, like he's listening to music and like, bam, you might hear a short note and he's waiting, but that was placed. He placed it, but he's already in the future. So he placed it here and he wants to see what you're going to do with that note that he just placed out there. He's going to be on the other end when y'all catch up so he can, to do it again. It's interesting, man. He's an
Yeah.
interesting brother.
Well, there's
Um,
some people that raise your level as soon as you play with them. You know what I mean? Like, and some musicians, like all of a sudden, everybody that gets around and plays with them, it, they're at their A game, or they bring out certain things and what's needed at the moment. They bring that
mm,
out in you somehow,
mm,
and
mm.
that's real genius.
Yeah,
That's able to do that.
yeah.
So yeah, this Friday, Fridays at 5. Uh, at SF Jazz on their platform. I was subbing for Brian Blade, which is interesting too for me because I played with Wayne before, long before Brian. But then I kind of felt like I missed out on the more creative side of Wayne and the acoustic side, which would have, which is a different experience. And because
Mm,
when I was playing with him back in the '80s and even early '90s, it was more electric music.
yeah, yeah. Well, Wayne's always been on the future with that, riding the surfboard, riding the wave of the future, man. And it's been brilliant, just kind of for me on my end being a jazz radio DJ. I mean, right when I came into the music, you go back and you soak Wayne up, which is great. A lot of musicians, you go back, you got all of their stuff now, but Wayne is one of the few that you don't have all. He keeps going, so there's always more to get from Wayne. That's why and I always think about the way that he thinks in all of these movies. His mind is is really putting some different things together. So he's one of those cats that think a little bit differently. And all honor and love to Wayne, man. Of course, we all hoping that his health gets a little better because
Oh, he's
selfishly we
it's
want to keep him.
definitely better. Yeah, it's definitely better because for this Fridays at 5, we did a pre-talk,
Yeah,
and it was the entire quartet and myself and Herbie. And Wayne, nobody could get a word in edgewise because Wayne was on fire.
woo,
He had so much energy, and I was looking at, so yeah, that's the Wayne I know and love. I was
right.
like, go, just go, go.
Well, that's beautiful, man. I talked to you a while back, maybe when we did an interview a long time ago about Mosaic and just bringing together all the beautiful women that you know and love, and even those that you didn't really know that much, to put this collage of sound together. And the one thing I remember from that interview, she's like, yeah, I wrote every note on that album.
That was the arrangement part. So, I mean, obviously
Yeah,
not the solos, but yeah.
of course, I know. But talk to me
Yeah,
about,
no, I did. I put a lot of work in.
yeah, I know you did. And I want to know, how other women, how your other girls are feeling, how powerful they're feeling. Esperanza and Diane and just the list goes on. You work with Jerry. I want to know that everybody's power is radiating and not being daunted by
Mm.
any of these other things that exist in the music. Let's talk about them, and if we can talk about it and change it, let's do it, because we need to support the sound, no matter who we are.
Mm. Yeah, I think everybody that I know is strong because I think you have to be to be
Yeah,
successful. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And
yeah.
the women that have really been successful, whether vocalists or instrumentalists, they're all pretty strong, strong personalities. And there's very few. I mean, that was actually one of the most remarkable things about Jerry,
Mm,
because she was very strong too, but she never. And I wrote a forward to the Jazz and Culture Pittsburgh. She taught at Pittsburgh before she passed, and she also got her master's degree from there. But they have a journal. I think it comes out yearly called Jazz and Culture. And
mm,
so the new one hasn't come out yet. I think it will come out soon. But I wrote the preface, and the whole issue is about her. And
mm,
so when I was trying to figure out what to write about, I kind of started thinking about who I could compare her to, and I thought about Mary Lou Williams, and now Mary Lou Williams was from a different era, of course, and she didn't want to play with other women because
mm,
see, so many women think I don't want to. Me too, and many women I've talked to, and many women now come to me and say, "Yeah, you changed my mind on that." But it was more like, "Don't call me a woman in jazz. I don't want to play with women," because it felt like,
that was the hole that you were pitching to go in, or
yeah, and it felt like I want to play with people that are as strong as me or stronger. And if you just make me play with women, that might not happen,
mm-hmm,
right? And that's how I felt all those years until one day, and this is why I did the Mosaic Project. One day I did a gig and I had realized I called all women, and I didn't plan on that. And it was Esperanza, and it was the first gig I called her for. Esperanza, Jerry was on piano, and Tinika Postma, and we played
mm-hmm,
a show in Israel. And
mm.
that's when I thought, okay, now something has shifted.
Because you
And
didn't
something,
you didn't do that intentionally, but you just called for the power, and you got the power, but you also got all women.
right. And it was the first time I called Esperanza. So for me, when she arrived, it was kind of like a change for me
Mm,
because before that there just weren't that many women playing bass that
yeah.
I wanted to really call for gigs. So she created, like, to me, a shift, and for me personally, and that's
Mm-hmm,
when I formed the Mosaic Project. But going back to what you were saying, I think all of these women are super strong and strong-willed and strong personalities, and I think you have to have that to really cut through and make it. And the thing that I guess my point with that is everybody doesn't have that same personality, nor should they.
mm-hmm,
And some of the things that some women may be celebrated for, sensitivity, or maybe it's natural for some women to be quiet or to not um,
Shirley Horn.
be boisterous or yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah, I was
remember.
thinking more instrumentalists than vocalists
Yeah,
because
yeah.
sometimes those things are accepted more with vocalists.
Sure, sure. I do remember one particular point. Shirley Horn at the Hollywood Bowl. I never will forget this, man. She's up there playing piano, and she worked it out where she's like just playing these. She had everybody right here. Everybody was quiet because all you can hear was her soft. She sang much softer and played the piano, silenced everybody, man. And it's like, I realized that there was power in that, as well as,
Hmm.
uh, being loud with it, Um,
Right. I was reading an article today that talked about the modern jazz quartet being that way,
mm,
where Connie Kay, oh, it was an article about Stanley Crouch's passing, that Ethan
yeah.
Iverson, I guess, wrote for
Mm.
WBGO. But um, yeah, and I was thinking about that, like, the intensity that you have to be able to play soft and keep the energy going, keep the intensity but soft.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's very, very masterful. And I think the music kept changing and evolving over the years because technology kept evolving, and all of a sudden you have amps and mics and all these things that keep pushing the sound forward. And I
Yeah.
think people started to forget sometimes, how you can also be powerful, soft, and find other ways to create energy.
Yeah. Well, one of my brother is 7 years younger than me.
Mm.
And one of the people that he went to elementary school with, uh, we call him Mally Mal, but he's Malcolm Jamal Warner, and I know that's he's a big part of your sound, and I love the way when I see him hop on stage with you, because it's like you back there playing drums and you smiling because this thing is about to come out. So tell me a little bit about my man Malcolm.
Oh yeah, Malcolm and I have been friends for a while, and yeah, he's just such a good brother.
He is.
He really is. And he's on this last project as well, and he was on another project of mine called "A Jazz Is a Spirit."
Yeah.
But this last one, it's kind of like the defining track of the album because it's, we didn't know George Floyd was going to happen,
Mm.
and our this is the first song. No, it's the second song on the record called "Bells." Bells ring loudly, and it's about police violence. And I wrote it with Philando Castile in mind. And I wrote the lyric. Aaron Parks wrote the music, but I wrote it from the perspective of the family or the person that is being left. When somebody kills somebody, all the people that are left to mourn. And I wrote it from the perspective of what would they say to this police officer,
Mm.
and
Mm.
how would they get their message across without yelling and screaming and all of that. So that was the vibe of that song, and then he did the spoken word on it, and it was really, I don't like to pick favorites, but definitely kind of up there, with my favorites. But then he came, he was gracious enough to come to DC, and we taped a Tiny Desk concert.
I saw that.
Yeah, and he
Gorgeous.
came, and yeah, it's kind of like you feel like you made it when you do a Tiny Desk concert.
Well, not you. You made it a million years ago. But it's just really wonderful over the span just to see you constantly creating. And I think one of the best things about jazz music, in general is of course, the beautiful sound, but really the beautiful relationships that underlie all of this music, how we hang together, how we play together, how we create together. And on stage, everybody's on their instrument, but you're speaking to each other loud and clear, without speaking. And, it's all for the benefit of the world to receive. So just appreciate you. Always an honor to see you and hang with you. And check out the latest project that Terry Lynn Carrington really can't talk about right now. Yeah.
Ah, I'll tell you the name of it.
Okay.
Twist 2020.
Ooh, low. Oh, okay. That's loaded. Okay. I'm definitely, we definitely looking forward to hearing more about that. Thanks for all that you've given us. Thanks for what you continue to do. Appreciate you, honor you, love you for sure. That's the one and only Terry Lynn Carrington, and you saw her where? Right here on the Just Jazz Cafe. All right, Terry Lynn. Thank you,
All right,
doll. Oh,
Leroy.
see,
Thank
I did
you.
it again, but I did it with love. I did it.
No, but yeah, I thought we already
I know.
settled that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, definitely with love. Much
yeah.
love to you.
Always. Thank you so much,
And
doll.
in this COVID moment when we're all just chilling at the crib, like
Yeah, it's a time that we can actually talk to each other because if it wasn't COVID, be on the run. I've tried to get you at Just Jazz many times. Like, no, I can't do that date. Hold on.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been crazy. It's even been more crazy since COVID. But
yeah,
we're
yeah.
all
I
looking
agree.
at life differently. I'm here talking to you casually, which makes an intimate conversation. I didn't like put the makeup on and do
Man,
all that. We just
you
chilling.
know, great seeing you.
All
And
right,
we'll
everyone.
we'll talk again soon.
All right, my friend.
All right. Peace.
Bye bye.